everybody. My name is Rupa Subramanya, and welcome to the Rupa Subramanya Show. Today, we're going to talk about an important and, for many, a very emotional subject: Canada's ever more permissive laws on physician-assisted suicide, called MAID, which stands for Medical Assistance in Dying. Our laws here in Canada are way more permissive than most other Western countries, and they could get expanded even further. That would include mental illness as the sole underlying condition, and one day even to mature minors. I wrote about MAID last fall for the Free Press. In the story, I spoke to several individuals who are contemplating MAID. One of the most compelling stories I heard was from 23-year-old Kiano Vafaien, who was seeking MAID as he was suffering from type 1 diabetes and vision loss. He was approved for MAID and scheduled to die September 21st, 2022. That is, until his mother, Margaret Marcilla, intervened. Keanu's sister, who had been helping him check his emails because he couldn't see very well, discovered that Keanu had applied and had been approved for MAID. She passed on this information to his mother, who confronted the doctor who was going to perform the procedure. Margaret Marcilla then took to social media, and the resulting backlash prompted the doctor involved to back out completely. This is why Keanu is alive today. To talk about what's going on with Keanu, where he finds himself, and what he hopes for the future, it's my pleasure to welcome Kiano Vafaien today to the show. Hi, Keanu. Welcome to the show. It's a real pleasure to speak with you. It's great to have you here on the show. Let me just first start by asking Keanu, how are things going with you? How do you feel these days?
I still have a lot of pain in my eye, both my eyes, my vision in my right eye, which has very little to see, is actually getting worse because of the silicone oil inserted. I'm not so hopeful on my eyesight getting any better, and I'm not so hopeful with my diabetes getting any better. I've been doing the bare minimum just to get by, and I've been waiting for another chance at medical assistance in dying.
So Keanu, before we get to that, could you tell our viewers and our listeners what are the medical conditions that you're battling, or you've been battling your whole life?
Well, I have type 1 diabetes, and that's been for 2 decades now. I was diagnosed at 4, and I just turned 24 yesterday on the 14th of March. I take insulin injections daily, and with every meal I have. So I try to reduce my meals to once a day to limit my injections. I've made that schedule so that I experience less pain, as little pain as possible when taking my insulin. As well, my nerve damage in the endings of my hands and the feet, especially in the wintertime, is very painful. When it's very sensitive to the cold. When I go outside, I don't really feel that it's getting bad. It's really cold. I don't feel that, but as soon as I get inside, it's just severe pain from the temperature change. With my eyes, with respect to that, I've had severe retinal detachment in both of my eyes from diabetic retinopathy, and after doing surgery to reattach the retinas, in my left eye, it failed to reattach the retina. The doctors failed because there was so much scar tissue. And in my right eye, they managed to reattach the retina, which is being bound by silicone oil. And that does blur my vision because the lens is being viewed through that silicone oil. And the doctor said when the retina is able to hold its own, they can remove it. They may be able to remove it. which would increase my vision. However, after the year mark of my surgery, the doctors evaluated it's not ready to hold its own. We can't remove the silicone oil, or else it could result in more detachment. So with respect to the left eye, as it does not have any function, I experienced neovascular glaucoma. That is when new vessels form in parts of the eye caused by diabetic retinopathy. But because the retina is not attached properly and there is a lack of oxygen and blood to the eye, it makes it very difficult for the eye to properly drain, which results in an increased pressure from the blood vessels, the new vessels being formed in those drainage parts. So as a result of that, I was prescribed monthly eye injections to neutralize those new vessels formed. And I also am prescribed different eye drops, 4 different types of eye drops that I take about a dozen eye drops per day to manage the pain and symptoms of glaucoma, which is increased pressure, as well as using medicinal cannabis to combat the side effects of those eye drops, which cause nausea, causes a displeasurable taste in my mouth, causes decreased appetite from that just icky feeling, sensitivity to light, although I have no light perception in the eye. So all in all, the eye serves no purpose, but is causing all this damage. So it was recommended to remove the eye, but that detaches me from having some sort of normalcy to my journey and being able to play off as if my eyes are functioning and I'm a normal functioning human being, and no one can really tell from a first glance that I suffer from vision loss.
Mm. How old were you, Keanu, when you first started to experience vision loss? I believe when we spoke for my story last fall, I believe the vision loss started with your left eye, if I remember that correctly. How old were you when this started to happen, and how did it affect? How did it? Your life obviously just drastically changed suddenly, and how did that? How can you tell us what was going through you? What was going through your mind?
Yes, well, I first had prescription eyeglasses at a young age in elementary school, but the the actual vision loss, which prompted a drastic change in my daily activities, my abilities to live independently, was at the age of 21. I experienced, I think it was um, June of 2021, when I had a floater where there was a hemorrhage in my retina and blood started to leak in my lens. So for me, it looked like I called it a dancing lady, a red dancing lady in my vision.
Mm-hmm.
But no one could actually see from the outside. So it was very hard to address it. I was actually very embarrassed to say the least. At first, it was very troubling to wake up and see that floater. I I thought it was my eyelashes in the way, so I'm constantly trying to move my eyelashes and look in the mirror, and I was so flustered. Um, then I was prescribed laser treatment for my eyes, which uh, would have been 5 treatments on each eye to neutralize those new vessels being formed from diabetic retinopathy. it would decrease my night vision and peripheral vision. However, I only attended for 2 of those treatments, 1 on each eye, which resulted in extreme pain. To say the least, I was petrified of the whole experience of smelling the residue from the laser into my eye, and it was so discomforting to have the lens placed in the socket of my eye.
Hmm.
And when my parents knew about this procedure, I asked them for their support, especially after my appointment when I'm out of the procedure and very sensitive to light, unable to see. And I felt very weak. However, they were not there to assist me with getting home in in a safe way. So I did not attend the rest of the prescribed treatments from my laser treat for my eye. I had to then suffer the consequences when it attacked my other eye, and inevitably resulting in complete blurred vision when my retina fully detached in December on both eyes.
Hmm.
So,
Um, yeah, I mean, that just sounds horrific. And, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. You talked about, you talked about all of these medications that you have to take. You have to take these insulin shots frequently. And you're also in considerable pain every day, especially in the winter. What is a typical day for you, like, Keanu, as a 24-year-old young person living just outside of Toronto? What are your, I just want our viewers and listeners to understand what your struggles are like every day.
well, to start in the morning, I wake up to test my sugars, my blood sugar. I have a continuous glucose monitor, which is attached to me for 2 weeks, and that is monitored with iPhone, with an app on my phone to um, to have accurate readings minute by minute. So when I wake up, I ensure that I have average glucose in range of 4 to 8 millimoles. And if it's not in that range for whatever reason, and maybe in the middle of the nighttime, I went up in sugar, maybe the night before, I had too much to eat and not enough insulin. I'll balance out my sugar and just rest in bed until it is green. Once I have a leveled sugar, I start my day with basic hygiene and exercising my service dogs. I ensure that they're fed and they have water after the night. I go outside and let them out. I watch them run around for a bit. And when I get back inside, I really have nothing else to do. I mean, other than letting them out 3 times a day for the bathroom, playing with them 10 to 30 minutes after that bathroom break. I will watch movies and TV shows that have audio description in front of a large TV, as the vision goggles, the vision buddy does not, it's not very comfortable. And when I wear it for longer periods of time, it disorientates me to the highest degree. I'm very dizzy. I'm discombobulated with my balance. I have I sweat a lot from wearing the goggles because they obstruct most of my face. And if I don't have medicinal cannabis during the day, I'm allowed to leave for medical emergencies to acquire some cannabis for my pain management. So I'll use my electric scooter which I shouldn't really be I shouldn't really be using because I can severely hurt myself or someone else. But it does get me around because I'm not able to drive and nobody's really helping me. My grandfather is quite old and he's the only licensed driver in the home. So after I've watched movies and TV shows or occupied myself with podcasts during the day, I I try to maintain that leveled glucose while drinking only water. If my blood sugar does go low from the activities with my service animals or traveling to the medicinal cannabis store, even the doctors, I'm allowed to drink some juice to raise my sugar levels, but I refrain from eating anything just so that I don't have to take another shot. My grandfather is disgruntled by this, but he's given up on asking me to join him to eat because he's scheduled for breakfast, lunch, and dinner as a normal person should be.
Yeah.
But
So Keanu, do you have any friends? We'll come to your mother a little later in the show, but because she figures quite importantly in everything that happened to you last fall. Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have friends who come and visit you? Do you have a social life?
not really. And that's mainly because my wish to die is still present. And my friends who were involved in my life, in my social circle, don't want to spend any time with me knowing that I want to die and that's what I'm trying to pursue. And if I do ask them for help, uh, um, it's mostly brushed off. Like if I ask them I need help to get dog food or I need help to go somewhere, it's often with a response of, well, do you still want to die? Like, what's your motive here?
Hmm.
And the response is they don't want to like waste any time with me knowing that this is what I want to do. So it's very disheartening because along the way I was told to inform everyone in my life about my decision, and my friends who I used to talk to aren't really understanding to any degree of what I go through. Uh, they think that I'm I'm good looking, I can get girlfriends, but even when I'm on social media apps, dating apps, a lot of um, a lot of my motivation isn't driven towards seeking out a partner to spend time with because I have this in my mind that I'm going through so much pain I can't direct any of my attention away from my diabetes and having a flatline glucose so that I don't experience discomfort.
Um, so Keanu, so you applied for MAID last year, and you were eventually approved. Um, can you walk us through the process involved when you applied? What was it? Was it hard, uh, or was it relatively easy to get the process started?
Well, when I first applied in 2022, it was my second or third call to the coordination service in the beginning of April. Uh, my first call was in 2018, and I was evaluated, and it was concluded that the legislation would not permit an assisted death. So not only did the legislation change in 2021, but also my condition worsened. After gathering um, a lot of support from my vision loss and seeking out the best help I can receive, the best treatment I can find in the world, I returned from the Bascom Palmer Eye Institute and knew that I had to call the MAID coordination service because my life would be burdened with this impairment. So the coordination service had all my information from previous years, and they said that a doctor would be in touch with me within 1 to 2 weeks. That dragged on to the third week when I called in and said, "What's the process looking like? Where's the doctor hasn't contacted me?" And the response was, "We've assigned you the same assessor from 2018, and he will be in touch with you." I wasn't happy with that answer because I didn't hear anything from the doctor. So I looked through my contacts and found his number. I called him and I hung up immediately because I didn't know what the outcome of the conversation would be. So after, I guess, he received a notification, he called me back immediately and notified me that he's not going to proceed with the application until he receives a psychiatric assessment for capacity. And I was disgruntled by this because I knew that my psychiatrist practices at a Catholic hospital. It would be impossible for him to assess me for a procedure that his workplace has policies against this procedure. So
Against MAID.
against MAID, yeah. So I voiced that concern and I said, where can we find a psychiatrist? I mean, the MAID coordination service doesn't have any resources in their database. I was calling them and I flustered their lines daily to reach this next step in the application. When the first assessor, Dr. Joshua Tepper, had acknowledged this, he suggested, well, we can find a psychiatrist who also does MAID procedures, and that would suffice for your second assessor. However, when I was asking the coordination service for that requirement for a psychiatrist to provide me a MAID assessment, they also fell short on providing me of their resources. They said that there is this doctor we can suggest. Her name is blah, blah, blah. And when I asked the doctor, my assessor, he said that she's a conscious objector of track 2 applicants, and I am a track 2 applicant. So I was frustrated to not only be talking with a psychiatrist that would not actually assist me with my application, but also not find another psychiatrist who could help me. And after months of getting psychiatric treatment, I constantly would mention MAID to my psychiatrist. I'm taking my medication that they've prescribed for depression, and the psychiatrist noted that I'm trying to fulfill enjoyment in my life. I attended music festivals, concerts. I would often go out to the mall with my service dogs. I would walk around. I wasn't a lump on the log, depressed in bed all day. So after noting this for months of psychiatric consults, the assessor finally determined that I have medical capacity and he can finally move along to the next process in my application to find a second assessor. I was so excited to hear that, but I was also reluctant to get my hopes up because of the lack of resources the coordination service had already not provided.
So sorry to interrupt, Keanu, but and then I want you to pick up where you left off. Can you provide us a timeline of when it is that you called your the doctor, I believe this was Dr. Joshua Tepper, the first assessor, to the time where you got, according to you, this good news that there was going to be a second assessor involved?
Well, I first spoke with Dr. Tepper when I found his number at the end of April and
2022, April 20.
2022.
Okay.
And this is all the while I was being treated for my psychiatric condition of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And through the consults, there was a rocky patch in my living situation. But after that, that rocky patch had happened in June of 2022. I believe it was by July 2022, the psychiatrist concluded in his notes sufficient information for the first assessor, Dr. Tepper, to move along with the application. So now we're in July 2022, where I received that the second assessor may be assigned. I was calling the MAID coordination service relentlessly, asking, is there another assessor assigned yet? Is there any news about my application? What can I do to make this process move along? And the response was just like my requests, my calls were falling on deaf ears. I was transferred to this person will call me back. And there was really no answer for me, no outcome until the doctor even received my barrage of calls and messages. He I guess kicked something into the MAID coordination service. There was some sort of resource that flipped the switch, and a second assessor reached out to me. And when that happened, in the middle of July, I believe, we had a virtual appointment, which is normal after COVID, especially with my disability and inability to travel long distances. She met me face to face virtually and heard it from my own voice that I am requesting for medical assistance in dying. I confirmed my birth date. It was that was quite easy, but what she had to do, I guess, was not what they had to do was not very straightforward. There was a lot of conversations with my my specialist with ophthalmology and endocrinology to gather more information about my conditions and I guess my capacity to control these conditions and deal with them. And again, my requests, my calls, my messages were falling on deaf ears to both assessors now. And I would have to call the MAID coordination service to actually say, hey, the doctors aren't answering me, and the doctors, all my requests are falling on deaf ears. Can you somehow move the process along? And the MAID coordination service would then, I guess, send a message to the doctors, which resulted in a prompt response. Said, we're still working on it. We're still, I still need to speak with your endocrinologist, for example. That was one of the responses. But then when the evaluations were concluded in I believe August of 2022, I was given the green light to start filling out the clinician aid A form, which is which would be considered my written consent for medical assistance in dying. And as you know, I suffered from vision loss. I wasn't able to actually fill out these forms. So I consulted with an organization, Dying with Dignity, who actually was very helpful in completing these forms and assigning a proxy and a witness to the proxy for my signature. And that was also virtually. There's two individuals involved who read out everything on the paper, wrote everything I had verbalized to them on paper, and it was all witnessed. Then after having received those forms digitally, I had just forwarded them to the first assessor. And I believe that was the document that was discovered through my email dated August 11th.
Discovered by your sister, who then passed on this information to your mother.
Yes.
Yes, and your sister, just to let our viewers and listeners know this, that that you got your sister to help you check your emails because you couldn't see.
This was because not only for the disability application, for important emails I was receiving from the government, but I would always ask her before signing into my email address. She even asked me, "What's your password again?" So I didn't actually believe she had complete access to my email. And I never asked her to read any of those emails involving my medical assistance in dying application, which, might I add, all of those emails from physicians were enclosed with a patient privacy policy. So it was only for me to acknowledge and read what was on those forms or those messages. And when I submitted that clinician 8A form, the doctor questioned why my signature is not on there. He was, again, very thorough in making sure that this was above board. So he agreed that I do have a disability that limits me from completing these forms. He saw that it was authorized by a representative Dying with Dignity. He was aware of the organization, and he accepted that submission of that form. When that happened, we were able to then speak about possible dates and the location it could take place. And I was subleasing a basement apartment in Brampton, Ontario. So I intended that I would have the procedure done there. My lease.
This was in
Sorry?
August. This was in August of 2022.
Yes.
Okay,
When
continue.
we started discussing dates after the clinician 8A form was received, I told the doctor I want to have it in the comfort of my own home. My lease is to expire October 1st. So preferably before that date, so I can have the accommodations met. And he suggested September 28th or September 22nd. However, I wanted it to be on a Sunday evening. However, he said he usually does this on the weekend in the morning. So
why a Sunday evening?
I wanted to have the weekend to explore my last days. I had a plan to try to enjoy as much as life can offer, and I still have until that appointment date and time to change my mind. So I was trying to accomplish some sort of bucket list. And I even thought about a gentleman's lounge, going out with all my friends, spending all the money I had to kind of go out with a bang. But he said that September 22 or September 28 works for him, and that would be at my house in Brampton.
So Keanu, just hold that thought. You said something very interesting a couple of minutes ago. You said that you picked Sunday because you wanted to just take stock of everything that had happened and was going to happen, and it would also give you an opportunity if you were to change your mind. Uh, if you're so sure about medical assistance in dying as the way to go for you, did you have doubts within you that you may not want to go ahead with the procedure?
I didn't have any doubts in my mind. However, what I was hearing from everyone else was doubts. It was, you're so good looking. You have so much to bring to the table. You can have so much fun. Life is worth living. And I really wanted to hear what these people were saying, and I wanted to see it for myself. I wanted to actually experience that with those people. So that's why I had planned out to, I guess,
Yeah.
go out with a bang, spend all my money, and maybe along the way, someone or something would have changed my mind. But internally, I had no doubts or fears of this. I was very looking forward to the day. However, my lease was ended from a criminal accusation of the Indecent Act. So on August 18th of 2022, I was arrested and charged with the Indecent Act, which ultimately limited my accommodation to be met, having it in the comfort of my own home. This frustrated me very much so. And after telling the doctor everything that had happened, I noted that it can't happen here at my grandfather's house. My grandfather accepted me in, and I told him that it wouldn't fly. Like, the name of the property it's not under my name. He would have to give permission to this procedure. So I requested for a location where I can receive this procedure with comfort and discretion. He suggested a place called the MAID House, MAID House, where he CC'd me on an email to the coordinator of that organization. We were in touch about the same possible dates. She also suggested September 22nd and also September 28th. And I chose September 22nd, as I did before. And it would be at this location. I was kind of put off track from my plans. However, I readjusted. I found the bus routes, how I would get there, and what my determination really showed in trying to reach that date at the MAID House.
Yeah. This conversation that you're having with Dr. Joshua Tepper, this physician, one of your two assessors, where we are talking about location, you're talking about dates. Is that a face-to-face conversation? Is that a texting? Is it on Zoom? How were you communicating with each other?
It was a combination of, like, on the phone, so telephone calls and emails. I don't
Okay.
believe we spoke about this over text message. And I also reiterated that, there might be a breach of private information from my email. Please send me text messages. Please refrain from using this email address. But he also cited that, it's not going to hurt to tell my family. I should be informing them every step of the way. And knowing their first response to any evidence that I had of my application, I was very reluctant to share the details, especially that it was weeks away, and that I don't need to have my own uh, my own residence to do this. I can go to a designated facility and get this treatment discreetly. And my family just did not like that idea. The doctor was still emailing me, and um, also the coordinator from the MAID house was also emailing me about dates. And I thought, what's the worst that can happen? My sister sees the email. What can they possibly do? I already have the approval and the date set with even the clinical itinerary of like, hey, I want to know what the timeline is, what the process is, because I wanted to attend with my service animals. I wanted them to be there, and that accommodation was met. So I was also needing to find someone to take over their care and control them after the procedure was done.
So sorry, Keanu. So, just a quick question. What you told me about, you know, that, as the day, uh, um, came, came, as it approached, um, you were hoping that someone in your life would step in and, change your mind. Did you at any point communicate this to Dr. Tepper or the other assessor?
I wasn't hoping that someone would step in. In fact, I heard it so much so
Mm.
that it started to become a subliminal thought in my mind. Like, are they right? Or are they saying this? And am I selfish to not actually acknowledge what they're saying? Is this selfish of me um, to kind of dismiss everything they have to offer, if they have anything to offer? So um, I had a meeting with my dad and my uncle, who didn't really have a relationship with, but I requested for a substantial amount of money for the last 30 days. I said that the date is set, time is set. I want $1,000 each day for the next 30 days to experience enjoyment. And even if it doesn't change my mind, at least I enjoyed the last days of my life. It wasn't in pain, it wasn't with grief, it wasn't suffering the whole way there, but it was declined. Uh, my uncle and his brother declined and were not willing to assist me with anything regarding this application until my aunt and my mom got involved after discovering the email. They um, they spoke to each other and said, because my aunt knew that I was very close to her at the time in September, the beginning of September 2022. She knew that there was a music festival approaching, a 3-day music festival that I really wanted to attend. The tickets, however, were very expensive, and a part of that amount of money I requested, I was going to use for that weekend. Uh, so when everyone knew that the proof was there, it was very evident this is happening, then surprisingly, my father said, "Hey, I got you a wristband for the concert." I was so shocked because he's very against um, the concerts and alcohol with the exposure to drugs, especially that I'm blind. Thought it'd be a very big risk for me to attend. So you got my sister involved as well.
Applying for MAID is, the most difficult decision anyone can make in their life. Uh, did you feel that it was simply impossible, absolutely impossible to manage your type 1 diabetes and vision loss? It obviously makes your life extremely challenging. And, none of us can claim to know what you're going through, but what you're going through is not in itself life threatening, right?
Well, um, to say the least, I I know it's a big decision. It's grave, and all of the accommodations I need to have a life with enjoyment while sustaining the other aspects that life requires, such as financial, housing, food, to live a comfortable life. I wasn't I wasn't being accommodated to the degree I see tolerable. I was raised with a caregiver from the age of 12. I had a caregiver cooking and cleaning for me. I was very accustomed to um, eating off of a silver plate. And now more than ever, I needed that extra support in my life. Someone who can be my eyes and take charge of things that I was unable to do. And the government, my family, especially my parents, were um, were not there for me when I called them out on this help. I need caregiving support, and my mom is very resourceful with that, having two businesses to supply caregivers, even licensed caregivers in Ontario. She wasn't willing to provide me with that care. My dad has a substantial amount of money. He wasn't able to fund a comfortable life. And after knowing that my life would be filled with not only pain, but um, I would be a burden onto myself and others, having to live at my grandfather's house, whether I keep him company or not. He doesn't he doesn't he's not required to drive anybody around anymore. He's done that with his four children and even with his grandchildren up until they've all grown up and I'm grown up. However, I'm still demanding all these things from him, which is burdening him. So after realizing, especially after coming back from the best eye institute in the world, I knew that this would be my fate. I mean, there's nothing to look forward to. Blind, I can't look past the my arm's reach and see clearly. So everything just became so dull in my life, and I wasn't getting the help I asked for.
Is that why you're still seeking MAID, Keanu?
Well, yes, especially now because I feel subjugated to my conditions and um, people's desire to keep me around. You look healthy and you are good looking isn't a reason at all for me to suffer this much. Just just the fact that I don't have the willingness or pleasure to seek out a partner, a female partner, um, and social friends, that in itself um, is making it ever more difficult for me to see something different, see a different outcome. So I've been constantly trying to attend hospital emergency rooms, requests for MAID from doctors who I've heard publicly offer MAID or have done procedures with MAID. But again, my mom will follow me to the hospital and again, say false information to try to control the situation and control my decision. It's my own decision to make, and no one, especially my family, has given me a reason that it's going to get better, because it's just gotten worse since September 22nd. There's been more safeguards and preventions against me accessing the medical care I desire.
And so these are interventions from your mother, by your mother, and members of your family, or is it the medical profession as well?
No, it's mostly my family.
Okay.
It's my mom, her husband, who's the lawyer, had criminal proceedings with my dad, um, which an altercation was premeditated and provoked, and that results in a house arrest. I'm only allowed to leave for medical emergencies, and I don't have proper legal representation. Until recently, I've received a legal aid certificate, but I don't see hope.
The story of how you got denied MAID is something I wrote about last year for the Free Press. You're an adult seeking MAID. You were an adult seeking MAID, and yet you weren't able to get it because your sister and your mother discovered these emails where you had essentially been approved for MAID, and your mother took to social media and called up the doctor, and so he was forced to back off um, from your case. So you're an adult seeking MAID. How did that make you feel that you had your mother intervening in this manner? Did you feel that your freedom of choice to make the choice you thought was right for yourself was somehow violated?
It was very much violated. It's unconstitutional, and I don't think there's any history of this. So there's nothing really to work off of. There's no case law that says this is the procedure we take when this happens. It's also new to everyone, and I felt very abused, and especially after September 22nd passed, I felt very neglected by my family, because they said, "Hey, we accomplished our goal. The doctor backed off, and Keanu's still here." And I said, "Well, now what?" And no one was there to answer my calls for help. I requested for caregiving support. I requested for medicinal support, because my medicines are not all free. Um, Specifically, my insulin needles are not free. Medicinal cannabis is not free. Transportation to my appointments is not free. And the government support I'm receiving is not sufficient. So when I turn to my family, the next of kin to the doctors or the government, I felt very much neglected, and I felt unloved. I didn't feel love when that happened. And still to this day, I'm requesting for caregiving support from my mother's two businesses. She's unable to provide that for me. It in fact seems like I have to negotiate on the terms of my life when it's not in her hands to decide. It's not in anybody else's hands to decide other than my own. I feel less than a person. I don't feel equal in society, because this decision has been taken away from me unconstitutionally. I feel very violated, to say the least.
At any point, did any of the medical professionals that you came in contact with, any of the counselors who were involved in your case, any of these people that you spoke to along the way, did any of them try to discourage you from going ahead with MAID, or or did they encourage you, or for that matter, just remain neutral?
Um, Most of the time it was neutrality, but also discouragement, um, in seeing that in seeing my mother's actions, in seeing a regular mother and son relationship anybody has, they acknowledge their love that they have for their mother or the love they receive from their mother. But it is far from my reality with my relationship. And that's what hurts the most, is because they're extremely misinterpreting my situation for theirs. It's so frustrating that even the slightest resemblance to a mother and son relationship has an impact on someone's either ability to discourage or encourage. Nobody has ever encouraged me on this decision, and it's it's frustrating that nobody is even assisting me with this decision. It's mainly because of the illegal injunctions that have been made, and everyone feels threatened to help me accomplish this. It's so sad. I'm very sad, and it's ever more difficult to deal with these conditions when I have this at the back of my head all the time.
Yeah, I mean, given what you've been through, I wonder, Keanu, what would be your advice for anyone facing a difficult situation such as yourself? Would you encourage them to consider MAID, for example? Would you maybe take a different approach with them and encourage them to maybe, try to get some family support or other kinds of support? Um, Basically, if someone was in a bad state, a really bad state, mentally, emotionally, and physically, and they asked you for your advice, what would you tell them?
Well, to start, I would I would suggest, considering my family hasn't really been supportive of it, I would suggest treading very lightly when speaking of their decision to medical assistance in dying. It's not um, it's not widely accepted by popular belief. It's inhumane, and to that, I would I would strongly suggest taking the right precautions when discussing this with people in your life, and especially with your doctors, to be very truthful, because they are the only ones that can be neutral in this situation. I was extremely honest, and I I said things uh, I never even really knew about myself when asked questions, and it would just be a domino effect of truth after truth after truth. You can't really get there with someone who you have already made some sort of um, precautions when speaking with them. So to start, I would say be very cautious with those you love and those who love you, because it's not very it's not taken very lightly. I would suggest to be very thorough in their care plan and their treatment with their doctors, being as honest as possible, not only to the doctors, but to themselves as well, trying to explore all possible remedies and treatments, even if that means um, going online anonymously and talking to others where you don't have to share your voice or your face, where you can feel more comfortable, then you can really understand if this is for you or it's just a phase. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that's the best thing I can say as advice.
Okay. How optimistic are you, given that you still want to go through with MAID? How optimistic are you that you'll get approved sometime in the near future?
Well, after going to the hospital recently in North York, Ontario, I was uh, I was shot down. Basically, my idea or my request was shot down because it's always circled back to suicidal ideations. And yes, assisted death is a species of suicide, but it doesn't overtake all the other problems I or anybody is dealing with. It could be a consequential effect of someone's condition, but make no mistake, it's not the first thing to be treated. And that's where I felt like I was silenced. I felt like everything else, a part of my history, was dismissed, and it was only focused on suicidal ideations. So now I'm very I'm very optimistic. And that's really the only thing that's helped me treat my conditions now with insulin and my eye drops. It's really the only thing making me go forward, because I've applied in a different country for volunteer assisted death where the laws are more liberal. And although it is not a funded program, it's not financially covered, I did receive a I did receive an approval for a financial remedy to this procedure. I also wrote about 50 pages of my life story and reasons why I want to die, why I want an assisted death. And I'm very hopeful to attend that organization
So
in Europe,
what country is this, Keanu?
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Okay.
After calling the MAID coordination service
Mm.
here in February, when I was connected with the nurse practitioner who's been in contact on my file for years now, since my first application, she said, your story is on the media, on national television. Everybody in Canada has access to what had happened. It's very unlikely that a doctor is going to assist you now, considering all that your mother has said and done. I felt so defeated when I heard that. And I didn't eat for days. I didn't care for my insulin for days. It was so frustrating to hear that, because in my own country, with the charter and rights and freedoms we have as Canadians, I felt so violated to hear that. And I felt very dejected to my life.
I know things haven't gone the way you hoped. This is a final question for you. How does it feel? How does it feel to still be alive?
Um, like I said, I feel very dejected. I feel very, um, I feel pain, and I think of things immoral. I think of things very immorally. I don't have much care to maintain what I have now. Um, I've lost touch with humanity because I considered myself to die months ago. And since that didn't happen, my reaction to things are very careless, especially with my relationships and things that I say to people.
Well, yeah, it's a challenging situation to be in, and I'm sorry that that you feel this way, but Keanu, I want to thank you for your courage coming on the show in talking about something as difficult, as complex, and as emotional as medical assistance in dying. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I really wish you all the very best on the path that you choose to follow.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Rupa. I appreciate your time and consideration along the way since you've been speaking for months now. Um, I appreciate your neutrality in this because I haven't really had anybody that uh, that sees eye to eye with me on this decision I'm making. So thank you for your sensitivity.
Thank you, Keanu. You take care.